Smallrig has a really interesting program called Dreamrig, where customers can custom design extension parts to their video camera rigs. Do you really need to be a true hardware design guru in order to get your ideas through the Dreamrig program? Well, let's find out.
Hello, my name is Håkan Mitz. I'm the editor at a blog called Sail in Finland, and this is a video for the Sail in Finland Camera Corner. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about designing additional gear for your video rig. I'm using stuff from a company called Smallrig, and they have an interesting program called Dreamrig, where they actually allow customers to custom design components for their video rigs that are not available by Smallrig or the standard components. So I was actually quite intrigued by this idea, but I was a bit worried that, would you actually have to be very much sort of like 3D modeling guru or hardware design guru in order to do something together with Dreamrig. But I actually tried it out, and here is my experience from actually getting my first Dreamrig component delivered to me. So actually what I wanted to do is I wanted a fairly vertical rig because I'm doing a lot of shooting on boats and in other cramped spaces, and I wanted that the rig wouldn't get in my way when I was moving around. Also on boats, you often need both hands to actually stay safe, so I also wanted something that I could actually hang around my neck. It also would enable me to easily carry a second camera. I do sort of typically mixed video photography shooting, so I would have a second camera then mainly for shooting stills. I mean, my camera is an Olympus EM1 Mark II for video, and just kind of by accident I stumbled on a Smallrig half cage for the camera, and I bought that secondhand without really thinking too much about how I would use it. But then I started to think about actually sort of building a setup, and also noticed that for really bright sunlight, the LCD display on the camera wasn't really good enough to actually give you a good shooting experience. So I was thinking that I needed a brighter on-camera monitor to actually help me with that. So then Dreamrig came out with new interesting looking handle. This kind of was the handle that kind of got my thinking going, because I thought, it would be quite convenient to carry a vertical rig from something like that, which I could more or less center on the camera. So I made my first proposal to Dreamrig, and that was just, for the handle, a small button to actually control recording, because some handles that Smallrig actually supplies do have this, but this handle that I was sort of longing for didn't have that capability. However, this didn't turn out too well. Smallrig came back to me, or the Dreamrig people came back to me and said, sorry, no electrical component. So the push button was enough of an electrical component to make it a no-no. The second thing, and the one that actually then got me something delivered, was my idea then that in order to make the rig more balanced, the EM1 is actually very, very light. So having sort of a monitor on top of it, especially with some heavy batteries, would make the overall setup quite uncomfortable to use and top heavy. So I was thinking that it would be better balanced if I was able to put the batteries below the cage or below the camera. So this was my second suggestion then, to have this sort of small cage with an integrated battery adapter and power connectors here, where I could then, here would be for the monitor, and here would be a USB for some other things. I have some USB powered components also that I might want to use on this. Okay, still the same problem. No can do because electrical components. But okay, I didn't quite give up yet. So my next version of the proposal was to actually then, instead of trying to integrate the electrical components into the rig, then use just this kind of existing battery adapters that Smallrig sells. There's a couple of different models, and then sort of bolt that into the cage and just have the cage then for protection around the battery to prevent it from being smashed. And lo and behold, now this thing, Dreamrig said, yeah, we can go ahead with this one. This was now actually an interesting part of the experience because based on that initial PowerPoint rough outline that I had done, then Dreamrig actually sent me back this first actual sort of prototype design of the component. And it looked very much like what I've been dreaming about. However, two things actually happened now. First, I thought, okay, perhaps I could do something like this in 3D. It would be interesting to learn. I have no previous experience in 3D design. And then the second thing happened was that, okay, I was starting to think that, okay, there's actually a lot of space around here. Perhaps that space could also be used in a better way. So I started to think about, what kind of 3D modeling tool could I pick up in a very short period of time. So I essentially looked at two. So I looked at something called Blender. And then the second thing that I looked at was something called Tinkercad by Autodesk. And this actually turned out to be reasonably simple to learn. It's essentially just, very few 5 or 6 different things that you do. You create blocks or holes, and then by sort of making the holes into the blocks, you model the component. So this was something that I could actually work with. And here's my first rough attempt at, a 3D model by myself. It's very primitive. It's just made out of square slabs, more or less. It doesn't look that nice, but it got me kind of hooked on this 3D modeling. Also, what it then got me hooked on was starting to think about how to actually then expand the cage. So here's first the battery adapter, here's the battery, but then I was starting to think that, okay, what else could I do? So here's this harmonic mixer. It was small enough so I could fit that on the side. And then, of course, talking about microphones and things, then here's a microphone then on the other side. And this would actually quite reasonably well fit underneath the camera without, making it too, extruding very much beyond the size of the camera itself. Also, you can see that the back here is quite clean, so it's easy. I can still lean the whole design against my stomach. There's nothing there that's going to very easily break. Okay, so I wasn't very happy with the first design, so I started to, do a second round. So here's a attempt at doing the battery holder, and here's then my second version with more rounded components and nicer looking overall design that I did, kind of the version 2 of the cage. And here's the version 2 then with the additional components added on, and actually quite satisfied with also my modeling capabilities here. So there was some additional back and forth between Dreamrig and myself, mainly really to sort of establish the height of the internals here. I wanted to enable a battery that actually had a USB connector in the battery itself, because there was no USB connector in the battery adapters. And when I found one with the measures, then I was able then to sort of confirm the final measures and the sizes of the design. Actually a few weeks later, then Dreamrig sent me this photo. So this is somebody at Dreamrig or Smallrig actually holding my component. There are typical sort of good design practices, modifications, such as the bottom here has a lot of holes to make it lighter and save on material. Also the top here, I had put the fastening grooves sort of sideways, but the final design has longitudinal sort of grooves here for fastening the rig or the cage to the rig. And then instead of having thick material with screws recessed, then they actually made a small ridge here in the middle where you then actually plug in the battery adapter. And then, a few more weeks, and then the cage actually then appeared at my house. And here's the very first build that I put together as soon as I had gotten the cage. So you can see the cage there at the bottom. The Saramonic has been changed for a Comica. There's a really wireless microphone. Here's a other microphone. It had a more sturdy looking, fastening, so I actually chose the Simco over the Rede. And then here, of course, the sort of the main component is now the on-camera monitor, and the monitor itself is reasonably light. It's plastic, and now with the battery not being here at the back of the monitor but at the bottom, the whole rig actually balances very nicely. So what were my experiences? So basically, I was really happy the way the cooperation with Dreamrig went. I was a total nobody when I started out, and I felt that I was really being given very nice treatment. And also I found out that I didn't need to be that hardware guru or that design guru to actually be able to work with them. Their designers then took my ideas and my rough sketches and turned those into production-ready products. So I didn't need to be aware of all the intricacies of sort of modeling aluminum-based products. So overall, I'm really happy with the outcome. And if you're interested, I'm going to make a second video, perhaps later this week, about the actual rig, so you can see, whether there's some ideas or some takeaways that could help you build your own rig for the similar kind of situations and usages that I'm looking for. So thank you for watching, and if boating and some camera gear is of interest to you, then please follow me here on Sail in Finland.